Here we go. It is time for another sprint zone. This one is for January 2nd, 2024. And we're heading up County Road 5. And it's a pretty chilly day, but I am super stoked that in the beginning of January that we can still ride and that we've got a pretty healthy crew here. Everyone pretty well organized as we come up to that spot where there's always lots of need for road repair. So we kind of get all over the place just to make certain that we can see what is coming up here. And I definitely don't like being close here because I don't need to flat or crash or anything. There we got to look at the rider coming back. See as we head into the turn. And now most of us are in the bike lane here. I prefer to be, controlling the lane somewhat, but being like in the bike lane and not as far out as some of the other riders. I don't see the point for that one. I think that there's still a little bit of normalized comfort with being in the middle of the road when there's plenty of bike lane, but I digress. We make the corner and it is game on, and there's John Lawyer waiting there for us. And we have a full contingent of reasonable people that are strong. And I'd like to say Marcelo has made it back after his incident a few months ago. Good to see him back in the fold and riding quite strong. Up front on this one, we see it looks like the legendary JC pulling off there for some reason, perhaps getting a look at who is all here, or just wants to sag back a little bit and make it a little bit harder to get some of that yo-yo effect. Up front, we got Scott doing some work, and he's working pretty hard, but not seriously hard. No one really wants to work. He's up there only because it looks like he's up there. We got Steve Hyland in the orange. We got Ian riding above his station. We got the big dog Byron Besserell in the red and with the gray shorts. And we've got Jamie there, slotted in quite nicely in a nice formation. Looking at my wattage, and it's not terribly hard, right? 30-second power, 170s. The instantaneous power, a little bit above 200, which is, around my FTP. So I'm not complaining at this point. And now it looks like someone probably said something to Scott about hotting it up, and it looks like the pace is increasing a little bit, or at least my wattage is. Hopefully the grade will allow my heart rate to come back down. Unfortunately, I didn't have my heart rate monitor, so I don't know what it's doing. But I'll try to wear that one a little more this year to see what's going on. Coming over the top, no one seems to be anxious to get going, and it is kind of chilly out, and it's January. I like to take it a little bit easier in the off season, but I'm kind of a lazy rider. I would probably ride around zone 2 or zone 1 all the time if I had my druthers. But as strong as this group is getting, there's definitely a need to start pushing it, get some of that high intensity training. Scott pulls off, and it looks like Mr. Hyland, who is always willing to throw it down up at the front, setting a good tempo. Ian riding in there strong, Jamie looking strong, and I've got a nice position here in 5th. Which is nice because the draft back here is much better than it is closer to the pointy end of the stick. Nice and smooth, not that much wind, maybe slight wind coming off of our right shoulder, but nothing really that drastic. But at the higher speeds, it is noticeable. Speed's good, 23, my RPMs are good, which is kind of interesting, seeing I'm like 95, 96. It's a lot higher on the road than it is on Zwift. Not quite certain why that is, but it probably has something to do with the road characteristics versus the trader load. But I digress. Looking rearward, it looks like Greg riding strong with the Aero helmet. Mr. Lawyer slotting in, looking extremely comfortable. Scott slotted in nicely, and there looks like there's a little bit of separation starting to occur in the back. And it looks like JC might be helping out Isla back there to stay in contact because maybe the accelerations were a little too much. And here's a spot where there's usually a little bit of acceleration, and you can see it doesn't look like much of a grade, but my instantaneous power went up to about 370 there. 30-second power below, looking in the 190, so It's not an easy ride, but it's not super hard yet. Then Ian kind of wiggles his elbow a little bit. I don't know what that was about, but I took that as signals he wanted people to come by. Like, and I was a little annoyed by that because, okay, you're wiggling your elbow because you have I don't know, an itch in it or whatever, or you wanted other people. Because he's actually riding above his station, and I do not like to be gapped off. So, being somewhat attentive, I start moving up a little bit, only to find out that that was not, in fact, his attention or intention. So I slot back and let the big men up front do some work. Byron pointing out some obstacles very nicely, and I can see now that my 30-second power is 220 or whatever. Yeah, this was above my FTP at this point when it was in the 200s, and I know that I'm not recovering at this point. Byron makes it look easy up front, and he's on his gravel bike and sitting up. Mr. Highland right there looking strong, and it's my turn to come up to the front because I think some of the big men up front didn't need help, but they wanted some help. There's too many wheel suckers, too many NPCs just sitting back, either in the way or not trying to make something happen. Too much ego, maybe trying to hold on. And if that's your goal, that's fine. I just feel a little guilty back there. So I come to the front for a little bit, see what it's like, see what it feels like to be up front. And I'm only doing like 22, but you can see that my power, 30-second power, 219, instantaneous power, not that high. It's dropping a little bit, and Byron happy to come through. I'm looking for more people to come through at this point. And what is happening here? Byron looks strong. I know Steve is always willing to come through. I'm going to slot in, but nobody comes around just yet. It's pretty pedestrian. I know that maybe it's tactical at this point because there's this little grade that we can see as you cross the bridge. Doesn't look like much, but at like 3 or 4%, it can be a real stinger, especially if the people up front stand up and make it hard for everyone. But now my instantaneous power well above 300, and I'm just trying to stay in contact here, standing up and looking at the rest of everyone bunched up nicely. Ian riding quite strong, surprisingly, at this point. Mr. Lawyer looking good, Scott looking good, JC sitting in nicely, Jamie looking good, Marcelo, after his long hiatus, looking good, and of course, Danny Evans, always a strong contender. But those in the back staying away again from the pointy end of the stick, and now Mr. Lawyer makes his appearance and presence known to the front. And you can see his jacket is flapping there a little bit, wattage being bled off. Probably 5 or 6 watts, but I'm happy for him to be wasting it up there because that's more draft for the rest of us, and it slows him down. And this was a strong acceleration. You know, I offered Byron the slot here, but he wanted to go back, maybe see what's going on there. And I'm happy to stay in at least, you know, 3rd or 4th position. That's still a good draft for me. Good shot at JC there, looking strong, and has his arrow cover, it looks like, on his helmet, providing an extra bit of aerodynamics, you know, for him. And his kit looks nice. Look how tight that is. That's nice. And as that BMC or whatever he's riding, it looks like it just disappears underneath him. Not quite as transparent as the Aero Road from Canyon, but still a very aero machine. And everyone is totally strung out now as we are a ramming and a thumping, and Mr. Lloyd has brought the speed up to 25, 26 miles an hour. Me sitting in, it's not horrible, 150 watts, but I need time to recover. I remember feeling the lactic acid searing through my legs, probably from the day's workout before, but nevertheless, a component to how I'm feeling today. And there's a little surge, and this was impressive. Not only was John sitting on the front, but he makes this surge where I had to come up with over 400 watts to stay in contention. You know, if the likes of JC were closer to the front, he would have been able to go with Mr. Lawyer, and perhaps the two of them would have been able to get away. And looking rearward back there, we could see that there was a further selection, and that might have been our very own Greg Kuchta, who had probably ridden 40 or 50 miles the day before, but it was too much. In fact, that surge was almost too much for me, and I'm looking to recover here. Mr. Highland looking happy. There's John fading. Look at how flappy that parachute is that he's got on his back. Yeah, John, I know maybe you're listening, but yeah, you need to get something a little tighter there. JC looking strong. Marcelo hanging on strongly back there. This is most impressive, as my wattage was above 300 for a little while there. And it's time to almost make some of the final push. Scott looking really strong up there as I settle in behind them in the number 2 slot, hoping that no one attacks too early. Looking rearward here, I'm still surprised how many people are here. And there's a lot of people that maybe should have been at the pointy end of the stick earlier. But on the other hand, maybe I'm glad they weren't, because I might have been shelled a little earlier. Now my turn to take the lead, pushing over 300 watts. And then JC takes over. Looking back to see who was there, Mr. Evans, who had done a pull during the warm-up session, nothing during this event, is fresh enough to be able to go with it. And Byron has recovered nicely, even on the gravel bike. And it looks like the final selection has been made. Mr. Highland caught back. Had he been closer to the front, that would have been okay. Marcelo looking strong here. And you can see, I don't know what he was doing in the off season, but his pedal stroke is so much smoother than it has been previously. Very nice. Whatever you're doing, Marcelo, very nice. And you're riding strong. Impressive. And here I am pushing over 200 just to make a final push, keep myself honest. We got Scott, who did a tremendous amount of work earlier, recovered enough to come by. Too bad he wasn't a little closer to the front. And I push over the top at over 200 and some watts. And I was happy with that. That was a good one, especially for this time of the year. Well done, everybody. Well done. And a good time was had by all. It would be nice to have more people in the rotation, but I get the fact that it was hard. The speeds that Byron and Steve are able to maintain at the front, they make it extremely difficult for anybody to participate without blowing themselves up. And this is why you end up with the selection that you have at the front doing the work. In any case, everybody's learning, everybody's getting strong. Super happy to be out on this January day. Well done, and a good time was had by all. Looks like first turnaround, looks like Byron probably won that one. Looks like very well done by, it looks like the three who made the break, Mr. Evans and JC there. Very nice, everyone, very nice. And here we are settling back. I think it's still a bad habit when recovering, being in the middle of the road here. I mean, at this point, there is no traffic, but there's also no reason to be that close to the yellow line. It's a bad habit. And we're just trying to keep it safer, because if a car does make the corner, here we are just sitting in the middle of the road. So, end of my lecture on that one. Until next time, peace out, everyone.
It was hard. I mean, I could barely go up there.